Good evening, everybody. Before we get started, I have a special guest here that would like to lead us in the invocation, but I'm going to allow Councilmember Hewitt to introduce.
This evening we're going to have Reverend Mark Jones give our invocation tonight. And Mark recently stepped down as the youth pastor at Birmingham Methodist Church, and he was in that position for 13 years, which is pretty unusual for somebody that does that. And Mark basically grew up here in Milton, what was Alpharetta, graduated from Milton High School, and has ministered to a lot of kids and youth in our area. So Mark's going to go into the Navy. He's going to be a chaplain and leaves in a few weeks to go up to Rhode Island for, I guess, his basic training. So just wanted to recognize Mark and let him give the invocation here one last time as a non-veteran.
And I ditto that. Mark's made a big impact on lots of young people in our community. So thank you for everything you've done, Mark, and we're real excited for your future. So thanks for serving.
Thank you for having me, and I will always call Milton my home, even if I'll be across the world. Let us pray together. Gracious God, God of compassion, mercy, and justice, we gather here as a people equipped to do the business of the city. Help us to remember that your love and your wisdom guides our hearts and our minds. Let us be a community that supports and hears the voices spoken with sound ears, patient hearts, and mutual respect. Let us see all who are gathered here with dignity as human beings you created. Let us remember the freedom we have in this place to make decisions. Let it be a reminder of all the places in the world where corruption and power prevent the best interests of all people represented. Let love be put before all other agendas, as we're reminded you have shown your love toward us unconditionally. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much, Mark.
Don't feel you have to stay.
But we're watching.
Thank you, Mr. White, for being here and your guest. All right, I'd like to call the regular meeting of the Milton City Council for Monday, July 6, 2015 to order. Sudi, if our city clerk will please call the roll and make general announcements.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'll be happy to call roll for the July 6th, 2015 regular meeting. I would like to remind those in attendance to please silence all cell phones at this time. Those attending the meeting who would like to provide public comment either during the public hearing or during the call for public comment, you are required to complete a public comment card prior to speaking on the item. There is no public comment for consent agenda items or items under first presentation. Those called to speak will be taken in the order that the speaker cards are received by the city clerk prior to the beginning of tonight's meeting. All speakers will identify themselves by name, address, and organization if applicable. The City Council may allow public comment on either an agenda item or general public comment from a representative of such an organized group or association, provided that such an individual shall file a notarized affidavit that they have the authority to speak on behalf of said organization on a form provided by the city clerk prior to the agenda item being called. Demonstration of any sort within the chamber is prohibited, so please refrain from any applause, cheering, booing, outbursts, or dialogue with any person speaking. Please show the same respect to the person speaking that you will expect to receive yourself. Anyone in violation will be asked to leave. As I call roll this evening, please confirm your attendance. Mayor Joe Lockwood.
Here.
Councilmember Karen Thurman.
Here.
Councilmember Matt Kuntz.
Here.
Councilmember Bert Hewitt.
Here.
Councilmember Joe Longoria.
Here.
Councilmember Rick Morrick.
Here.
And
Councilmember Laska,
he's in the building.
He's in the
on
building,
the way.
so.
Yeah. Would everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, Sudi, if you'll please call first item.
Our first item this evening is approval of the meeting agenda. Agenda item number 15, 172.
Okay. One thing I want to mention, I want to recommend that we move our new business agenda item of consideration of a resolution appointing a member of the Board of Zoning Appeals for District 3, Post 1, after the consent agenda. Move that up a little bit. Is there anything staff would like to add on the agenda or change? Any council? Okay. Then I'll open up for a motion on our agenda.
Mayor, I move that we approve the agenda with the addition of moving forward agenda item number 15-186 to right after the consent agenda.
Okay.
Second.
All right. Have a motion from Councilmember Longoria, a second from, I believe, Councilmember Morey. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous. So do we have any public comment tonight?
I don't have any general public comments, sir.
Okay. I'm gonna, but we do have some specific.
Yes.
Okay. On public comment, it's a time for citizens to share information with the mayor and city council and to provide input and opinions on any matter that is not scheduled for its own public hearing during today's meeting, which is basically general public comment, but the same rules apply to a specific. There's no discussion on items on the consent agenda or first presentation, and each citizen who chooses to participate in public comment must complete a comment card and submit it to the city clerk. Please remember this is not a time to engage the mayor or members of the city council in conversation. And when your name's called, you'll come forward and speak to the microphone stating your name and address for the record, and you'll have 5 minutes for remarks. And again, we'll have some specific public comment on items as we move further. So we'll move on to the consent agenda. Sudie, if you'll please read those items.
Our first item this evening is approval of the June 8th, 2015 work session meeting minutes, agenda item number 15173. Next, approval of the June 15th, 2015 regular city council meeting minutes, agenda item number 15174. Next, approval of the June 24th, 2015 special called city council meeting minutes, agenda item number 15175. Next, approval of a construction services agreement between the City of Milton and Blunt Construction, Inc. for the Oakhurst Leaf Drive Stormwater Improvement Project, agenda item number 15176. Next, approval of a professional services contract to provide master planning services for the live fire training building and fire public works storage facility, agenda item number 15177. Next, number 6, is approval of a change order to the professional services agreement between the City of Milton and Tennell Spangler and Associates, Inc. for the purpose of conducting additional public information meetings regarding the development of a form-based code for the Arnold Mill area. Agenda item number 15178. Next, approval of a cancellation of claim of lien at 14220 Cogburn Road. Agenda item number 15179. Our 8th item is approval of a professional services contract with Barge, Wagoner, Sumner, and Cannon, Inc. to provide bridge inspection services for the 3 bridges. Agenda item number 15180. Our 9th and final consent agenda item this evening is approval of a construction services agreement between the City of Milton and Blunt Construction, Inc. for the 13590 Waycroft Circle Stormwater System Improvements. Agenda item number 15181.
Okay. Do I have a motion on the consent agenda?
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion that we approve the consent agenda as prepared by staff.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion from Councilmember Wards with a second from Councilmember Thurman for the consent agenda for approval. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimous. Those that are here. Okay. I believe we moved up our BZA appointment. So, Susie, if you'll call that item.
Yes, sir. This item was moved under approval of the agenda. Consideration of a resolution appointing a member to the City of Milton Board of Zoning Appeals. This is for District 3, Post 1, agenda item number 15186, and that's for Councilmember Longoria.
Okay. Councilmember Longoria, take it.
All right. Just wanted to make everybody aware I'm nominating Kim Keller as my appointment to the Board of Zoning Appeals. Kim is originally from Cincinnati, Ohio. She graduated from Indiana University with a Bachelor of Science degree in finance and a concentration in accounting. After graduation, she was recruited by Macy's, New Jersey for their management training program. While at Macy's, Kim worked as a financial analyst, assisted with credit promotions, and helped open a new store in Maryland. After Macy's, Kim worked for E.F. Hutton, Shearson Lehman, and Autranet in various capacities focused on capital markets, vendor management, contract negotiations, purchase agreements, and soft dollar brokerage. Kim then helped her husband Brian open his own company, which was a recruiting and placement firm for technical consultants. After supporting her family as a stay-at-home mom for 20 years, Kim has now returned as a part-time employee and works for as an office manager at a small local company. Kim and her husband Brian moved to Atlanta and Crooked Creek in 2002. They have 3 children. One's at Georgia Tech, one's at UGA, one's still in high school. So fall football schedules are very fun for that family. Kim has served on numerous PTA and extracurricular boards. In addition, Kim served on the Crooked Creek Tennis Committee as secretary, league representative, and treasurer, and also found time to serve on the HOA board as well. Kim will be replacing Nancy Plisnarski in this position, and I'm pleased to present Kim to the council for your consideration and approval.
Okay. I'll open up for discussion or a motion and a second for approval.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve Kim Keller for the Board of Zoning Appeals for District 3, Post 1.
Second.
Okay, got a motion for approval from Councilmember Coons, second by Councilmember Morrick. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimous. So, Sudie, do you have we do the swearing in? Kim, if you wouldn't mind stepping forward, we'll go ahead and swear you in tonight. And if you could please get your home phone number ready for them to publish so that anybody that has an issue, they can call. And as always, thank you so much for stepping up and volunteering. And it's one of the things that makes City of Milton so great is the community and folks that live here getting involved, and makes a big difference. So thank you. If you'll just raise your right hand and repeat after me. I do solemnly swear and affirm
I do solemnly swear and affirm
that I will faithfully perform the duties of
that I will faithfully perform the duties
the
of
Board of Zoning Appeals member,
the
Board of Zoning Appeals
Board of Zoning Appeals member
of the city,
of the city,
and that I will support and defend the charter thereof,
and I will defend and support the charter thereof,
okay, as well as the Constitution
as well as the Constitution
and the laws of the state of Georgia
and the laws of the state of Georgia
and of the United States of America.
and the United States of America.
Thank you, Kim.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. Okay, we'll move on to reports and presentation. Sudie, if you will call those items, and also for the record, Councilmember Lush is in the room now, as you know.
Our first presentation this evening is presentation of the American Heart Association 2015 Mission Lifeline Cares Award. Chief Robert Edgar.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. On average, the fire department responds to 95 EMS calls per month. In the past 12 months, 4 of those EMS calls were people that were not breathing and did not have a pulse. And due to the quick actions of our firefighters and police officers, those 4 people are alive today. These 4 incidents caught the attention of the American Heart Association and Emory University. They have what they call a cardiac arrest registry to enhance survival, or CARES program. And it comes with great pleasure in presenting the following firefighters and police officer with the CARES Award from the American Heart Association and Emory University. Now, we have 13 recipients of this award. I have 4 of them here with me tonight, but I'd like to read the names of the others that are not here at this time. It's Richard Bishop, Russ Womack, Ryan James, John Davenport, Chad Sweeting, Daniel Clausen, Tyson Blake, Johnny Gomez, Mark Haskins, and for the ones that are here this evening, if you please come up, Shane Black, Mike Baumgartner, Greg Foster, and Officer Scott Mulvey, if you're permitted. Sergeant, you're still an officer.
If it's all right, Chief, can council come down and get that picture?
Yeah.
That'd be great.
Can't mess it up.
And I just want to thank you guys as well as the guys that aren't here tonight, because, you know what, this is the kind of stuff that really counts. This is the most important kind of news we get. So that's, thanks. All right.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Sudie, if you'll please call the next item.
Our next item this evening is a proclamation recognizing Hopewell Youth Association. This is being presented by Mayor Joe Lockwood.
Okay, tonight's my honor to have in the audience the president of the Hopewell Youth Association, Mr. Ken Sissons here, along with Vice President, Mr. Jeff Fester, and board member, Mr. Scott, I believe he's Paulus. Also, we're also fortunate here to have the former president of the HYA Youth Association, currently the chairman of the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board, Mr. Scott Stahusky. And I'm going to read this proclamation and then ask you guys to step forward and present it. Okay, we've got a proclamation here recognizing the Hopewell Youth Association. Whereas the city of Milton, Georgia is an incorporated city in the Fulton County, Georgia, and is the city charged with delivering municipal services. And whereas the mayor and the city council fully support an active and healthy lifestyle as promoted through the Parks and Recreation Department. And whereas baseball is a sport that was invented in Cooperstown, New York in the 19th century. And whereas Hopewell Youth Association is the first Parks and Recreation partner of the city, providing a variety of recreation, all-star and travel baseball programs for children and teenagers in Milton and the surrounding community from ages 4 to 15. And whereas Hopewell Youth Association, in partnership with the Parks and Recreation Department, has served unincorporated Fulton County and what is now the city of Milton since 1986. And whereas Hopewell Youth Association has demonstrated their support of the city with a generous and substantial contribution toward the cost of the construction or reconstruction of Bell Memorial Park. Now, therefore, we, the mayor and the city council of the city of Milton, hereby recognize the Hopewell Youth Association and offer our heartfelt gratitude for this amazing contribution to the city and to its citizens. And this is given under my hand and the seal of the city of Milton, Georgia, on the 6th day of July 2015. And I'm going to ask the council as well as members of the board to step forward and present this proclamation. And this is a token of the appreciation that we have for you guys and everything you've done. Big, important part of our city, and you guys have touched a lot of young folks.
He's going to speak at the public hearing and the city recook. He wants to speak twice.
Gotta love it.
Thank y'all. Squeeze. Yes, I was.
Yeah, we're just going to get Jim in here. Get behind you.
I like that y'all are, you've gotten much better at getting it. Thank you. It's great.
It takes a while.
All right, one. Very good. I think it's me. We're good, all right. Let's sit here.
Dr. Sidney, if you'll call the next item.
Our next item is a proclamation recognizing Eagle Sticks Rec, Inc., presented by Mayor Joe Lockwood.
Tonight, we're another great honor is having our audience, the president of Eagle Sticks, Mr. Ken Morton. I'm going to read this proclamation and then have Ken step up front and receive it. So, I have a proclamation here recognizing Eagle Sticks Recreation, Inc. Whereas the city of Milton, Georgia is an incorporated city in Fulton County, Georgia, and is a city charged with delivering municipal services. And whereas the mayor and the city council fully support an active and healthy lifestyle as promoted through the Parks and Recreation Department. And whereas lacrosse is a sport that was played by American Indians at the time of their first contact with European settlers in the 17th century. And whereas Eagle Sticks is a partner of the city, providing a premier lacrosse program for young women in Milton and the surrounding community from ages 4 to 18. And whereas Eagle Sticks, in partnership with the Parks and Recreation Department, continues to expand both the physical presence at Northwestern Middle School and the number of young women served. And whereas Eagle Sticks has demonstrated their support of the city with a generous and substantial contribution towards current expansion of playing fields at the Northwestern Middle School. Now therefore, we, the mayor and the city council of the city of Milton, hereby recognize Eagle Sticks and offer our heartfelt gratitude for this amazing contribution to the city and its citizens. This is given under my hand and the seal of the city of Milton, Georgia, on the 6th day of 2015. And I'm going to ask Ken if you'll step forward and as well as the council to present this. Again, we really appreciate donations, great cause, and you guys are doing a great job.
Thanks. Thank you. Yes.
All right. Very good. Thank you.
Yep.
Tonight. Okay, if we can move to our first presentation. Sudie, if you'll please call those items.
The first item under first presentation is consideration of RZ 15-13, 3225 Francis Road by Sexto Omar Martinez Rivera to rezone from AG1 agricultural to R3 residential to develop 2 single-family residences. Agenda item number 15182. Next is consideration of an ordinance to create a conservation subdivision, Chapter 50, Article 5 of the City Code of Milton. Agenda item number 15183. Our third and final first presentation item is consideration of an ordinance of the mayor and council of the city of Milton, Georgia, to fix the ad valorem tax rate of the city of Milton for fiscal year 2015 and for other purposes. Agenda item number 15184.
Okay, we have a motion on the
Mayor,
first presentation.
I'll move to approve the reading of the first presentation items.
Second.
Okay, got a motion, Councilmember Lusk, a second, Councilmember Hewitt. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimous. And Sudie, we're going to move on to our public hearing. If you would please sound the item.
Our first public hearing item this evening is consideration of an ordinance of the mayor and council of the city of Milton, Georgia, to fix the ad valorem tax rate of the city of Milton for fiscal year 2015 and for other purposes. Agenda item number 15184. First presentation was this evening, July 6th, 2015, regular council meeting. Ms. Stacy Inglis.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Dave, if you don't mind, can you bring up that presentation? It's just a quick little presentation that I usually do every year. It just gives the facts about the tax assessments and the property taxes themselves. According to the official code of Georgia, section 48-5-32, we were required to hold 3 public hearings on the establishment of a millage rate when there is an increase in the tax digest. The first public hearing is tonight. We will also be reading the first presentation, which we just read. And the second public hearing will be held on July 20th, and the final public hearing will be held on August 3rd, where the ordinance will also be considered for adoption. Tax bills are projected to be mailed on September 1st with an October 31st due date. Next slide, please. The total tax digest is $2,238,970,962. And keep in mind that property taxes includes real, personal, and motor vehicle taxes. The total amount to be levied are $10,592,572. With it divided up, property taxes is a little over $10.2 million, and motor vehicle taxes is $380,000. We're projected to have an increase in tax collections of 5.48% due to inflationary reassessments of existing property. When coupled with the upsurge in the digest for newly improved properties, the overall taxes levy will be 6.5% higher than 2014. And understand this is not a millage rate increase. The millage rate of 4.731 mils is the same rate the city has had since our first tax billing in 2007. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Stacy on this? Or comments? Nope. So do we have any public comment?
We do not, sir.
Okay, I'll close the hearing then. And again, I'll come back up if there's any questions, comments, or anything. Okay, move on to our next public hearing item.
Our next item is consideration of a resolution of the City of Milton, Georgia, regarding a possible extension to the existing 90-day moratorium barring acceptance of applications for land disturbance permits to residential development on property in the R1, R2, T2, and AG1 zoning districts. This is agenda item number 15185. Mr. Ken Gerard.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, thank you very much. You have in front of you this evening a proposed public hearing involving a potential extension of the existing moratorium with respect to the acceptance of certain applications related to certain criteria under the city's zoning code. This would be the third iteration of this moratorium if the council is inclined to extend it. You may recall that we adopted an initial moratorium on March 16th. We then extended it for a 90-day moratorium on April 13th. And this, of course, would be a public hearing for an additional 90-day extension on July 6th. This is a moratorium that would be put in place while the city staff work on a new conservation subdivision ordinance, as is reflected in the text of the moratorium document. I would point out to the council one thing of note, and that is that the breadth of this moratorium has been reined in a bit, and that is, of course, to reflect the reality. We had talked about this, that as we further sort of refine what in fact will be captured in this conservation ordinance, we will also limit the moratorium such that it's not broader than it needs to be. So what this moratorium would do would be to bar applications for conceptual plan approval and land disturbance permits for 1 acre or more of disturbance for residential developments on properties located in the R1, R2, T2, and AG1 zoning districts. And of course that is less than what we have had previously. It would impose this moratorium until the latest of October 10th of 2015. Of course it would terminate earlier if in fact the council takes action to adopt the conservation ordinance as is anticipated hereunder. Obviously if the council simply decides to terminate it earlier by way of official action without adopting another ordinance, you could do that as well. While this moratorium would be in place, while there would not be the ability to apply for applications for those land uses, anyone that has existing permits can continue to build under them. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, this is the public hearing. There is a separate agenda item where you will be asked to actually take action on this item. Mr. Mayor.
Okay. So do we have any public comment, City, on
We do not have any in support. We do have one public comment in opposition.
Okay.
And that's Mr. Walter Recook.
Okay. Somebody, the recook is standing out there chatting. If somebody might ask him if he'd like to speak.
She lucked out.
I think we're discussing the moratorium on the land disturbance application.
Again, on the moratorium, I think we've gone through the
Mr.
process.
Recook, if you wouldn't mind.
Excuse me, my name's Walt Recook at 615 Scarlet Oak Trail, Milton, Georgia. I think we've gone through a long enough process with the moratorium. I think we've looked at what we needed to for the moratorium, that we're at a point now where we really need to go forward. I don't think that this is something that we can't do without a moratorium. This is anything that we need to look at. We can look at it in a normal process. That's how most governments do it. They don't do it where we have to have a moratorium. We can sit back and have group meetings, be it with different groups, neighborhood groups, development groups, and come up with a consensus of how to solve problems instead of making it where it hurts every business in town that involves construction. And I just don't think that's a very good way of solving a problem. I never really quite understood what the emergency was for, but I think we can come up with a better way of solving a problem and coming up with a solution. And I just don't think a 90-day moratorium is a great way to go about it. I think there's many other ways that we can solve problems. I think we've had many other means of going about creating things without creating moratoriums. This is just another way of, in fact, creating problems amongst builders and developers where they have some kind of negative respect towards Milton, that why do we have to have moratoriums? Why is it something that a moratorium is required to get any kind of changes or ordinances done in the city that we can't just do as a normal process like most communities do? That if there's some kind of change that you've got to go ahead and get in a process, that we just have the discussion and go ahead and get it done. You've affected every zoning class. And again, you've made it effective for every acreage in the city. And I just don't understand that. But I would appreciate any consideration you would have towards removing that moratorium. Thank you.
Thank you. Sudi, do we have any more public comments?
That's all, sir.
Okay. Then I'm going to close the public hearing and open up for council discussion or questions to Ken. Anybody have anything? So, I'll say my opinion is I think we proposed this and presented it to our public, and well, some folks may not have. I guess I'm the lucky one that gets the brunt of the decision sometimes, and it's not necessarily from developers, but you know, there are property owners that have been very concerned, or this has made a big change for them, and I think we presented it for the intent in the public to as necessary while we did our conservation subdivision ordinance exercise. So again, my personal thoughts were, if we were to extend this at all, I would want to limit it till I think we're going to make a decision and discuss the conservation subdivision in 2 weeks. I would prefer to be specific until then, because that was the whole reason that we did that. So, you know, for whatever that's worth, I'd love to hear everybody's comments or direction on this.
I'm unsure why it is for 90 days if we're supposed to be hearing this in 2 weeks.
I think Ken said, or until the conservation subdivision.
Right, that's the absolute maximum. If the council takes action to adopt this ordinance, it expires immediately that evening.
And the only reason I made my comment was, even if that's the intent, when we propose it and present it, it looks like another 90 days.
It looks like another 90 days, and that's what, you know.
Well, just being mindful, of course, though, that if we only extend it for the next 2 weeks, and then for whatever reason you have a deferral or a postponement, then we'll have given up the ability to continue it. So I guess erring on the side of too much, with the understanding, Councilmember Thurman, that if you take action that evening, it's gone. If you don't even adopt the ordinance, but you want to take action that evening and say it's gone, it's gone. So really, you're not wed to this 90 days.
I would rather do it for 60 days rather than 90 days, because I think 90 days just looks like we're just...
And, of course, the council has that discretion this evening.
Or even 30. And then that way, if we needed, because we can extend it again if necessary.
That's right, we could, but we would want to make sure we have enough time to advertise.
Sure.
So if you're asking me what my recommendation, if you want it less than 90, I would respectfully ask 45 or 60.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I'd certainly support 60 days. And just to make it clear, again, and you've read it here, this modifies the original moratorium by excluding any developments under 1 acre in size. So it does open up this moratorium to an extent.
Correct.
And lessen some of the categories.
And lessens the categories as well. Yes, sir.
Anybody else?
I'd be in support of 60 days also.
Well, then we'll...
And that'll be the next agenda.
Yeah, we'll have that opportunity in a minute. So, okay. We have no items on the zoning agenda or unfinished business, so we're going to move to new business. And Sudi, if you'll please call that first item.
Consideration of a resolution of the City of Milton, Georgia, regarding possible extension to existing 90-day moratorium, barring acceptance of applications for land disturbance permits for residential development on property in the R1, R2, T2, and AG1 zoning districts. Agenda item number 15185. A public hearing was held at this evening's meeting, July 6th. Mr. Ken Gerard.
Mr. Mayor, same presentation, of course.
Okay. Open up, back up to any comments, or if there are questions. If there's none, I'll open up for motions.
We do have one public comment.
I'm sorry.
Sorry.
All right, Sudi.
Mr. Walter Recook.
Now I can get to my notes. Walter Recook at 615 Scarlet Oak Trail. The main point I want to make is that even if you limit it to 1 acre, you still have a lot of people that are 2 or 3 acres that are subdividing properties for family members and such that have no impact involving this conservation subdivision. It's just really not fair to them that they're being impacted by this, and they have no real dog in this fight, and they're being pushed back because of this. To limit them in this problem is just, again, something that I don't understand. And same thing, I understand 60 days because of advertising and things like that, but again, I just have to ask, if we've got an issue that we can't resolve some other way than creating a moratorium, I just don't understand it. Why is a moratorium seeming to be the only way we handle things? Can we just not say we will go ahead and let business continue? And we've already hurt business. If you don't get a permit within the next couple weeks, I can assure you, you're not going to get a subdivision out of the ground and paved by the time bad weather hits in November. So if you don't start getting permits for a lot of these projects, you're going to basically ask for erosion problems to last you all the way through the Christmas season. This is a situation you do not want to have. If you are going to release this moratorium, you've got impact for what your decisions are. Even if you do make a decision that something needs to change, a final plat on any of these subdivisions could still be modified or revised before these plans get approved. So again, you have an opportunity to revise and look at this again, even if a subdivision plan is approved. So just to say we're going to stop LDPs, you have another shot at looking at a development project again when the final plats come before you. So again, I ask, please don't even do it for 60 days. You're really pushing back construction, where you're really limiting a lot of developers to really be forced to really not having any construction this whole year because of what has happened. And I think that's a real detriment to our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more public comments, Eddie?
I believe there's a public comment card being filled out right now.
Okay, Mr. Reese, do you have public comment?
Mr. Scott Reese.
Scott Reese, doing business at 13685 Highway 9, Milton, Georgia, 30004. Give me just, okay. I've attended all of the meetings, have even met with some experts, Dr. Sam Asadi, he's a soil scientist, PE, probably the most knowledgeable person on septic fields in the state of Georgia. As he told me, and your city manager, the can of worms that you're going to be opening with experimental systems, which would be systems smaller than 67 bedrooms, subdivisions, which is where the state regulates with their standard permit. To go down that road is just not something I think that you or myself, being a taxpayer, really wants to go down. So if you're going to do CSOs, I think they're really going to be limited to large-scale projects. I don't think an HOA of under 100 homes is going to have the financial wherewithal to maintain or repair a system if a catastrophe or anything else happens. And a septic system in and of itself, when it's installed correctly, designed correctly, and maintained, is designed to fail. It has a lifespan. So it is going to fail. It may be 30 years, it may be 40 years, but you're going to be repairing all of the systems that are just community field line systems. So I'm going to ask you respectfully to consider doing away with the moratorium on new development since the real number of properties that it would affect is going to be so small that I think that the timeline of developing those would be such that you're going to have all of your plans, they're going to have time to come, whether you decide to go forward with a CSO or if you're going to revise your AG1 subdivisions, no one is going to come in and start and do a 300 or 400 lot subdivision in a short period of time. So I think that you need to look at not just the development community, but there are families that have owned property and properties for many years, and you've had them on hold now for at least 90 days. And there are a few families that I know of that have health issues and other reasons that they need to sell. And since their property is a smaller size, that a CSO is not really going to work, your blanket coverage of all LDPs over an acre has caused a lot of hardship in the community, and not just the developers. But every time a developer buys a piece of property, he is purchasing it from typically a family that has been in Milton since prior to the development or the incorporation of the city. That's really all I've got to say. Thank you for at least considering my point of view.
Thank you. Do we have any more public comments, City?
That's all, sir.
Okay. And then I'll close the public hearing portion and open back up to discussion, or if there's any questions for our staff. Again, on the same point that I said earlier, I supported the moratorium initially because of the reasoning of if change and folks might want to jump to conclusion it's going to be bad and just throw in some applications for zoning no matter what. And I think that moratorium served that purpose. I do believe there, and again, I have not gotten much pushback from developers, but there are situations where families and smaller properties are affected. And again, keeping in mind that all of these are issues that are based on zoning that they've had for way longer than we've been here. This is not for people rezoning things or whatever. This is all based on the existing zoning they have had. Again, that being said, there's talk about extending it for longer or shorter than 90 days, but longer than the 2 weeks or whatever because of advertising. I'd also like to throw out maybe there's because as we are discussing the conservation subdivision, there are some small properties that it's probably not going to make sense, but that are impacted, whether someone's trying to split it up within the family to build a home or whatever. So, again, that's another option where, again, I don't know would it be feasible to say, come up with a number like a 10-acre parcel or a 5-acre parcel or less be excluded, or would that?
From a legal perspective, the answer is yes. I mean, if you're talking about making the moratorium less inclusive, yeah, that's right. I think it would be a little challenging to make it more inclusive since that's what we advertise, but less, we can always go less. Yes, sir.
Bert?
I think one of the things that we talked about last time was a major subdivision versus a minor subdivision, and I think we have definitions. I'm going to say it's 5 acres or more. I don't know if that's the right number, but at least that's something you could, that we've got a definition for that may help.
3 lots or less.
Karen?
Mayor, I agree that 90 days to me is a little too long. I think we ought to go with 60 days. And where it says I think we ought to change it to a 60-day extension of the current moratorium bearing the acceptance of applications for conceptual plan approval and land disturbance permits for 5 acres or more of disturbance for residential development on property. So it's my understanding it's 5 acres of disturbance, so that could actually be 7, 8, 9 acres or 9 lots because it's actually the area that's disturbed. Is that correct?
That could be.
So I would like to say 60 days and go with 5 acres or more of disturbance.
And Councilmember Thurman, just in other words, where there is 1 acre right now, just substitute 5.
Yep, and where there's 90, go to 60.
Thank you.
Bill?
But Carter, when you do, and Kathy, comment on it too. When you get a land disturbance permit for a piece of property, it is for the entire piece of property, is it not?
The permit is, but the actual land disturbance associated with that permit may not be for the entire piece of property. So at 5 acres of land disturbance, it could be a minor subdivision. It could also be a major subdivision, just depending on how much actual land disturbance is proposed under that particular development.
The way this reads, it says 1 acre or more of disturbance, and that's what I was wanting a clarification on.
Right, so that would be the actual land disturbance associated with that particular permit. It wouldn't necessarily be a minor versus a major subdivision plat. It could be either with that level of land disturbance.
Well, when you go get a land disturbance permit then, is it actually calculated on the amount of disturbed land, or is it calculated on the entire parcel?
Well, that's a good point. Fees are actually calculated on the proposed disturbance for the entire development.
Right.
But the permit is issued based on disturbance of that area that's
Right.
to be developed without the development of the home. So the NPDS permit application actually requires us to look at the overall development potential of the property.
Correct.
So if I'm hearing you right, with the proposal that Karen just said, someone could come in and develop on land on 5 acres on a 20-acre parcel, if 5 acres is all that's being developed. Is that right?
That's correct.
I think that's the way it's worded now with the 1 acre, correct, Ken?
I think that's right, and I think this discussion is good, because if we're going to go that direction, I think it'd be nice for staff to have some feedback on what council's expectations are. That's right.
I'm not comfortable with that. 5 acres.
I think that the issues that we've seen have been related more to the minor plat versus the major plat so far with this moratorium. So those developments that are coming in with less than 3 lots, or 3 lots or less versus the major subdivisions.
But to me, if somebody wants that has 20 acres and they want to disturb less than 5 acres of it, I mean, to me, that's not necessarily a bad thing, because that means they're preserving hopefully 75% of it, so.
Well, if they ask for...
Well, under the development permit process, when we look at that, the actual land disturbance of that development permit is going to be for the infrastructure only.
Not for the homes.
Not for the home sites that are to be disturbed too. While we do include that in the NPDS permit fee calculation, we don't include that in the land disturbance permit itself, if that makes sense. So you could actually have more land disturbed ultimately in the development.
Sir,
Okay, Rick, excuse me, I'm going to ask that y'all be recognized. Joe's been waiting. Joe.
So right now, the current moratorium runs out when, Ken?
Well, it was adopted, the 90-day one was adopted in April.
April 13th.
Very, 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 very soon. Right.
Okay. So I'm going to argue on the side of the citizens that spoke against extending the moratorium. The loss that we incur by not voting to extend is that it's business as usual prior to the moratorium. And the exposure that we have, or that we consider that we have, the reason we put the moratorium in place was to make sure that the work that we're doing on the conservation subdivision ordinance has a chance to be discussed, voted on, and put into effect. Okay, so right now to recognize the fact that the conservation subdivision isn't going to be applicable, as Karen was mentioning, on all sizes of property. It's only going to be applicable at a certain size, and we haven't even decided technically what the size is. We've discussed it a little bit, but we haven't decided that, and we also haven't decided whether or not it's going to be optional or whether it's going to be mandatory. We may be having a moratorium in place for something that ends up that wouldn't have had an effect anyway. So I just want to make sure that if we didn't extend the moratorium, it lapses on the date that we mentioned, and that potentially we haven't lost anything. Potentially we do, but there's a big question mark as to what we've actually lost. Correct?
guess what you would go back to is, you're right, you would go back to the business as usual. That
Right.
if there were plans out there that were being held at this point, hoping to develop it with a 1 acre minimum by
And
right.
I just want to refresh everybody's memory. I mean, it wasn't like this was problematic or business as usual prior to the moratorium wasn't any kind of disaster. It wasn't, bad development or anything like that. Certainly, it wasn't development that had the option for conservation subdivision.
That's right.
Okay, but that's we operated as a city for 6-8 years before we had that.
One point out too, and it's interesting as things evolve and change. If we go back, 8 years, and in the first few years, the big thing that everybody was concerned about was, was losing our AG1 and 1 acre minimum lots and whatnot. And so, keep in mind, this is the thing that everybody, was pushing for. That's what we've got to keep. So this is not, again, as I said earlier, it's not folks going in and rezoning or whatever. It's still, 1 acre or larger lots, and something that was what originally everybody was concerned losing. We're not going in and adding more density or whatever.
So I would argue, just to finish up, that we've had 90 days to try to get something done. It looks like it's going to take a little bit more than 90 days, but just because our efforts are taking longer than anticipated, should we penalize our citizens by delaying what their plans are? Or should we just go back to business as usual and try to finish that up as fast as we can? And I would argue that that's the route we should take.
Anybody else? Rick?
Yeah, I guess if I go back to when I think we first did the moratorium, we did it because we were hearing a lot of concern out in the community, people saying that they didn't like, even with the AG1, kind of what was happening with the subdivision development and the look and feel along Milton. That's at least what I gathered from all the discussions I've had with people. That's why we were even considering looking at a conservation subdivision ordinance to say, do we need to make a change, whether it's a change to AG1 or conservation subdivision. I think that's why we put the moratorium in place. We heard, I think, from a lot of the citizens, the existing citizens, not the developers, saying we're concerned about the direction the way the city is going. I guess the question I have is, we've talked about land disturbance and total disturbance. Is there a way to stipulate by acreage versus by the amount of disturbance? Is there a way to limit with this moratorium? So if I've got a 5 acre lot out there that could be developed, is there a way to write it so that I'm not being so restrictive, and we also don't have some potential unforeseen consequences?
I think, conferring with the city attorney, so long as whatever criteria you place is objective and something that we can not apply arbitrarily, I think that's fine. So as long as, to the extent you define 2.00 acres, now that doesn't mean 2.01 or 2.02, but yes, I think as long as you give us whatever that number is, I think that works.
Great.
And I think that, by delineating an acreage would take out some of the guesswork of, how much are you disturbing versus tweaking this or that. But Matt, I think you had a comment.
Yeah, just sort of to Rick's point as well, and also in answer to Councilmember Longoria's point too, there were residents that are concerned that when land is developed, it's developed forever. It doesn't change, it doesn't go back. We can't go back and change that. And up in our district, in my district where I am, as far as what I'm seeing and what I'm hearing, is that people are just concerned about the fact that the changes are happening so quickly, that making sure that we go through this process to its completion for deciding what we're going to do in this conservation subdivision ordinance is, I think, an important thing to consider, considering we've got residents that feel that they're penalized because of AG1 sprawl. And, I think as a councilman, it's my obligation to represent my district to say that we need to slow it down a little bit, and I'm open for the moratorium for 60 days, as is written, other than just changing the 60 days.
Okay. Anybody else?
Question, Matt, are you saying are you open also to designating, like increasing, putting an acreage amount in there, so we're not limiting it to 1 acre of land disturbance?
I want to make sure if it's I like the 3 lot idea better, if we can say that. that would make more sense to me, because I'm just not confident in the acreage of land disturbance versus what they can actually develop on over time. Carter knows that more than I do. But 3 lots sounds better to me.
Well, 3 lots,
Well-
you have to relate that to actual square footage or dimensions, I think. So if you say 3 lots is equal to 5 acres or something like that, I think that's where this discussion is headed.
Right.
And we'll probably need to come up with that number.
Again, I think, it's kind of, if you're tying it in with the conservation subdivision ordinance, which has just prompted this moratorium, and again, it's council's decision, if you think through, is it going to, when it's all said and done, if you think it's going to affect larger parcels, but not smaller, then you may feel comfortable coming up with a number of acreage. I'm just throwing out 10 acres, but 10 acres or less, if you didn't think it would apply as much or be optional there, then there may be a comfort level going forward. But, again, just throwing that out there. Joe?
So here's the problem I have. A 90-day moratorium plus another 60 days is 150 days. I mean, that's getting close to half a year. And that is, we're not just impacting developers. I mean, developers see it first, but we're also impacting landowners. And those landowners are people that pay taxes and are citizens. So I agree with you, Matt. We should listen to what our citizens are saying. And certainly people in your district, you know what's going on in your district, and I would agree that people have some concerns about this, but when you start getting close to half a year of limiting somebody's business and what they can do, it's like we're taking too long. 90 days is a long period of time, and if that's what we thought we needed to take, then we should have tried to get it done. Now, I agree, it was a complex issue, took a lot, it was a lot bigger than we thought that it was, okay? That just doesn't give us the right to continue down this path and continue people from, basically converting their assets into whatever they think is best for them. Okay, as landowners, they have certain rights when it comes to that, and we can temporarily impact that, but I don't know that that should reach to a half a year. So,
Matt?
Yeah. I mean, I agree. I don't want to see anything that's temporarily delayed, become something permanent. At the same time, though, that when development happens, it tends to be permanent. And so the question is the degree of the temporary aspect, what are we looking at? The other thing I'm concerned about, too, and this goes a little bit more to our historical preservation assets, but, the conservation subdivision ordinance is maybe a tool that can also be used to dictate what areas of the properties that are being developed might actually be conserved. And if you really try to allow for some development to happen, I worry about some of those historical barns and structures that aren't being considered too, that could disappear in this process. That is an option too. I just see a lot of things where this AG1 sprawl is causing the change to happen to our district. And I understand where we are, it is temporary, but we need to have the vote on it to decide. And I worry that if we don't have that vote, then we allow for, again, those pieces that aren't very many left of our community to just disappear. So that's just my concern. I see where you're coming from. I don't like a long process either. I want to get this done, but we need to get this to a vote, I think, before we release this moratorium.
Okay. Karen?
Personally, I think we've come a long way with the conservation subdivision ordinance, and hopefully we'll have a decision made on it soon. So that's why I would support a 60-day moratorium, extension of the moratorium. But I think, in my mind at least, the conservation subdivision ordinance is only going to work for certain size parcels and greater. And if that's all it's going to work for, let's go ahead and free up the ones that we know that it's not going to be relevant for, and go ahead and take them out of this moratorium. And I don't know if we want to do 10-acre parcels, or if we want to do the way it's written now. I was just trying to keep it simple, and that's why I said I changed from the 5 to 1 acre disturbed land, just because that's the way it was already written. If there's another way to do it, so it's a number of lots or number of acres or whatever, but let's free up those that we know aren't going to make a difference.
Councilmember, one of the potential ways you could do that would be to just simply exclude minor plats if you wanted to. I mean, that as we've heard you talk back and forth about excluding something that probably doesn't apply. That's a very
But that's just
easy
that's
and
just three
It is.
minor ones, and,
If you wanna
and
go
in
bigger
my
than
mind,
3
that's
lots.
not that may not be enough. I mean, my mind, five houses on a piece of property probably ain't going to work for a conservation subdivision. So I just didn't know whether or not. I mean, that's a start, but I wasn't sure if that was going far enough with it.
Bill, I think Bill's next, and then Joe.
To Joe's point over there too is, obviously, we've been spending a lot of time on this, and as far as the subdivision, conservation subdivision ordinance, we've been talking about this for almost a year and a half now. But we placed this moratorium into effect 90 days ago. We put a heck of a lot of effort into researching this whole issue. I don't think we're at the end of the trail yet, but I think we can see that we're getting to the end of the trail. And I think 60 days is probably a reasonable time to anticipate that we can achieve that. 60 days is a lot less than forever, to Matt's point here. And nothing really moves quickly in government from my experience, my short experience here. But I think with this council and what we've done here in the last several years, we've made a lot of progress. And I think we're committed to coming up with a solution to this issue. And I think we can do it in 60 days. I'm committed to doing it, helping the process along. But maybe to ask you a question, Mayor, and residents out here brought it up too. There's been a lot of, there's been some discussion with residents out there as to the fact that their property's being held up from being sold. What kind of actual response have we had in that regard? Are we holding up a couple hundred property owners out here? Or, I know, holding up one of them, I guess, would be a travesty, but you know, what kind of actual impact has there been out here that you're aware of?
Probably 5 that I know of that have come and met and, you know, concerned situation. And I'll just throw this out here, you know, with the elephant in the room too, is, you know, and to Matt, all due respect to obviously our citizens' concerns, and to Matt's point of, you know, concerned about seeing development, but also to Joe's point, you know, those same folks that are concerned about the development, if we just decided to do a 90-day moratorium on their bank account and their retirement savings that they may be needed or whatever, and then decided to extend it another 60 days or whatever after a point, that would really put, as Joe said, that's 150 days. That's 6 months or whatever. So, you know, maybe people aren't looking at it that way, but there are people that's where they've put all their life savings in, and they were ready to do something with it. And, you know, now we've, you know, gone 6 months holding it up. So if people would look at it the same way as if, you know, maybe you live in a small lot, but you've got a big retirement account or bank account, same thing as if the city came in and said, we're going to put a freeze on that for 90 days. You know, I can understand 90 days, but as you keep continuing out, there are going to be some folks that are, you know, really impacted. So,
well, I don't really think this has restricted anyone from selling their property.
It has, yeah. Definitely, because no one's going to buy it until they know what they can do on it. Yeah, it's definitely no. They've lost contracts on it because of that. So, and so that means it's not necessarily the six months. It could be longer because that, you know, whoever was going to buy it may have go somewhere else and buy something else. Bert?
Well, we're talking 60 days and 90 days and all that, and there's a very good chance that 14 days from now that this could be over, which is, I think, if this expires on the 13th, roughly of this month, so maybe a 7-day truly extension. I understand the advertising and stuff sort of that, but I'd be, I guess, interested in seeing this through to the 20th at least, so we can have the reason we put the 90 days in place to begin with. If 60 days is the magic legal number, then so be it. And I would like to, along Karen's vein, you know, let's say that it's a tract of 10 acres, and I know that's an arbitrary number, but every number we pick tonight is going to be arbitrary. So I would be interested in that.
And you're saying 10 acres of
10
land,
acre
not,
tract.
not land disturbance or
No.
anything else that,
Keep it simple.
okay,
Yes,
that's fine
ma'am.
with me.
Rick?
Yeah, I guess that goes back to what I originally was trying to say about the acreage. I think when we leave it at an acre or less, I think we really are restrictive for something that doesn't even apply to conservation subdivision. So if we can free this up, even in this 60-day period, if that's what we extended, I think that's what we should do. So if someone has 5 acres that they want to develop, we're not limiting them, because that's probably not going to apply to conservation subdivision.
Anybody, Bill?
I'd go along with the 5 acres.
Joe?
I think we've done a good job discussing this. I would just say that I think 90 days is a long enough period of time for us to figure this out and get stuff done. I think we let the current moratorium lapse, continue the discussions the way we have, vote on it, on the 20th or whatever the date is that we're going to put this up. I think we will have accomplished our goals. I don't think that in the time period that we have in between the moratorium lapsing and us having an opportunity to finish discussion and vote, we're going to see some kind of drastic change in what's going on. But I respect everybody's opinion, and I think we've discussed this quite enough.
Question.
Matt?
That 1 week that we released the land disturbance permits, right?
1 day.
The 1 day, well, it was it 1 week?
How many acres were
It was
impacted?
3 days.
3 days for 2 property owners, but we had additional, 7 land disturbance
It was
permits?
6 total.
6 total for
How many acres?
of that 6?
Oh, I can put my fingers on that number for you if it's important to you.
It's
It was-
important to me, I like to know.
It was more than 150.
150 acres for that 1 week of land disturbance permits.
It would take me just a second to get you that number, but I'll work again.
I want to know.
Okay. Anybody else? I don't know, Chris, is that something you can research now?
I'm probably going to have to go back to my
Yeah.
office to get it, and then it will take me a couple of minutes. But I can, if you want to defer that item to later, well, I guess you're in public hearing, so at some point you're going to close the public hearing and move to this item in new business.
I think
We're in new business now.
Oh, we're in new business now.
We're at a vote.
That's what happens when you get to that meeting late. You all of a sudden pick up the agenda at the wrong time.
My point is I worry that, and just because of what had happened in that point in time, once we released the land disturbance permits, we got a lot more come through than what we thought we would.
I can,
I see your point, Matt.
And then
But I think you're putting 3 days, 150 acres versus that was probably going to happen, at some point anyway. It's not, it just happened to be within those 3 days.
We knew, yeah, I think Matt's point, state me if I'm wrong, we knew of 2 that were formally coming before the city, and then all of a sudden, a lot more came forward, which took up quite a bit of acreage, and that was, I think, when we were trying to open
But
it.
you're throwing everything together in one
In
box.
one
One of them
box,
was
yeah.
for 3 houses on like 20 acres or something, so that's not,
This till after staff.
that's not tract housing, I mean.
Yeah.
And again, my point, I think to Karen's point is that at some point, those will probably come, whether we have a small window here or whatever. And if there's a conservation subdivision ordinance, it's still probably going to be the same number of homes and density that happens. It's just, you block it out for a while, then you open it up, and it's going to come in versus trickle in.
I do have to, well, I'm sorry, on that point, I just want to say, I'm not worried about the density on that, and I'm just worried about which land is being, how the land is being built. Because once it's changed, it's gone.
Mayor, could I maybe suggest, if the council is willing, that you just take this item take it in new business and just move to defer it until after the staff reports. That means we'll still take it up tonight, but we can continue on. I can get the next agenda item out of the way, then I can go do the research while staff is giving you their staff reports tonight, and then we'll pick it up right after staff reports. That'll be the most efficient use of everybody's time.
Mayor, I move to defer this until later in the meeting.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second for deferral till after staff reports. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous, so we'll just defer this item to a little bit later. Sudie, if you want to call the next item.
Our next item, Mr. Chris Lagerblum is going to present. Do you want to Go ahead and do that real quick.
Yeah.
Okay. Consideration of professional probation services agreement between Chief Judge Brian Hansford in his official capacity as the Chief Judge of the Milton Municipal Court and Integrity Supervision Services, LLC, as a private probation provider by the City of Milton as the governing authority. Agenda item number 15187. Mr. Chris Lagerblum.
Mayor and Council, this is a request tonight for you to consider something that's a little bit different than we're used to considering. And that is because this one, its original power is generated in Title 42 of the Georgia Code, which gives specifically the Chief Judge of a municipal court certain powers, certain exclusive powers, to name private companies to do certain things for the court, one of which is probation services. In that law, it specifically says that the chief judge would can enter into an agreement and use the authority they have under this title with a private probation provider, so long as the governing authority approves it. And so this is really a two-step thing. Our chief judge, Brian Hansford, has entered into a agreement with a new probation provider based upon his experience with them and his desire to take that forward. He's suggesting at this point that we enter into this agreement on a month-to-month basis while we actually go to the market in a competitive bid to locate a permanent probation provider. But it is the recommendation of the court that they are not satisfied with the provider that we have today, which is Judicial Correction Services, JCS, and want to move in the short term while we do a more comprehensive search. To bring you some background, JCS was a company we've had for some time. It has sold from the original ownership that had it, so its ownership has completely changed. And it has been a company that has come under some of the pretty intense scrutiny in private probation companies here lately with billing practices, et cetera. So I'm not suggesting that any of those things occurred in Milton. I'm just suggesting that the judge at this point for the court has made the decision that he'd like to move a different direction in the short term while we pursue the long term. So what you're doing, if you approve this tonight, is you are simply approving the judge's selection of a probation provider. And the mayor would be signing this agreement and just saying that the city consents to it. It also gives you the authority to know if there's ever any changes made to it. So it's kind of a nuanced way in which it allows a specific person powers that nobody else would have in the city. But I'm happy, or Ken's happy, to answer any questions about the legal nuances of it. This is coming as a request of the judge.
Yeah, it is. Ken,
it is. Yeah, there's a specific statute that specifically allows this and requires that the governing authority of the municipality ratify it. But the actual mover behind the contract was going to be the chief judge, not the city.
Is this process typical?
It is typical. In fact, I'm working on this very similar contract right now in another jurisdiction where the county authority will approve it but have really little oversight of it.
Open up for questions, Joe?
No questions.
Bill?
So all considerations then are between the chief judge and the contractor then?
That's right, and it sets up there is a fee mechanism within there. The probation provider will typically collect some of the fees, et cetera, that are imposed by the court. And in fact, there may be a pass along for certain services like alcohol testing, monitoring, those sorts of things that are imposed by the court. That's correct. Very standard.
Who covers those additional costs?
The actual individual that is the subject of the offense.
Yeah, right. Okay. Another point then. So this contract is solely between the chief judge and the contractor. So the city inherits or is not liable for anything?
Right. That's a good question. I don't know that it's been litigated before. It is a curious statutory construct where these two entities get to enter into a contract, but then the governing authority has to ratify it. It sort of begs the question, why? I think that the city manager is right. I think that it's intended to provide a guarantee that you as the governing authority will know of any changes. The statute specifically provides, for instance, that if there's a breach or an act of default, that the judge can initiate termination, but then that too has to be ratified by you. So the General Assembly keeps going back to you to make sure you are up to speed on how this contract is working and whether or not it's being changed or whether it's being breached or terminated. Councilmember Lusk, I'm not precisely sure what you're supposed to do from the standpoint of oversight. I think very little. But I do think that the General Assembly wants you to know of it. And candidly, you'll be funding the court system, so that does give you a stake in how it's operated.
Maybe one point that concerns me is the issue of confidentiality between the contractor and the offender, I guess.
Right. So the statute that controls is very clear that all of the documentation, there is a very finite set of entities that have access to the probation-generated documents, of which the governing authority of the city is one, but they're not generating public documents. These are not documents that are accessible to the general public. So that's all governed by state statute as far as the confidentiality of the documents that are exchanged. It is. In fact, I was reviewing those statutes this very afternoon.
Okay. So would a breach of confidentiality then be a breach of the contract?
I think it would be. I think that would be an act of default. For instance, if the city judge became aware that the private probation entity was leaking documents or even inadvertently it allowed confidential documents to be released, I think he could set that up as an act of default and demand that it be terminated. Absolutely. Very serious, if you ask me, in fact.
Well, I'm wondering what recourse it is as far as the city is concerned in a case like that or an issue like that.
I think if that occurred, I think the best way to approach that would be to notify the city manager and have this, or me, and we could reach out to the judge. I am very comfortable with this judge that he would not look kindly at all if he felt there were any lapses in confidentiality with respect to these documents. Because, for instance, one of the things that is typically a product of this is the ability to access criminal records. Well, that's a terribly intrusive, confidential element, and there are fairly extreme penalties for violating any sort of confidentiality with criminal records and things that are sort of held by the state.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I guess it goes back to my original question: what is our liability in a breach like that?
That's a good. I continue to believe, though, very little. To the extent that a private probation company did, in fact, leak confidential information, I think that an individual, let's just say it was a defendant who was on probation, they believed that the statutes had been violated or they believed their privacy had been invaded. I think there would be a claim against the private entity, of course, and I think that we would obviously have the right of indemnity against the private probation company as well, and they would be required to carry insurance.
Is this, to Bill's point, Chris or Ken, how is this, if it's any different, or is this the same as agreement with the previous provider?
I don't know that there is an agreement just like this in place with the previous provider, but I may have to defer to the city manager on that. I'm not sure.
I don't believe there was, and I don't, that would almost go back to 8 years ago that this current provider was selected. I don't have off the top of my head, I can't answer for you exactly how that decision was made. I don't know that necessarily. Might be an interesting answer, but I guess what I'm trying to say is that I don't know that it would necessarily affect this agreement. This is tracking in conformance with the law that exists today.
And again, I guess go back to Ken, is Hamlet in this situation typical of
it is.
Other, make sure we're not.
It is, and I think it adds another sort of a level of insulation between the potential liability as the city. It's not like you have much of a choice in this. It's a statutory construct that anticipates that when the vendor is selected by the city judge that we will ratify it. I'm not suggesting you have no discretion, but I am suggesting the statute anticipates you'll do this with very little oversight over it.
Anybody? Questions or comments? Bill, you have anything else?
No, sir. I'll go ahead and make the motion.
Okay.
Move to approve a professional probation services agreement between Chief Judge Brian Hansford in his official capacity as the Chief Judge of the Milton Municipal Court and Integrity Supervision Services, LLC, as a private probation provider by the City of Milton as the governing authority, agenda item number 15-187.
Second.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Councilmember Lusk, and I believe Matt, no offense, Karen, but I think Matt said it earlier. A second by Councilmember Kuntz for approval. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous. Okay. Chris, are we at a point with the information that Councilmember Kuntz wanted? Do we have that yet? or
We're not.
continue?
No,
Okay,
I want
okay.
to. I've got some start of some information, but I want
Okay.
I want to
Alright.
confirm that it's good.
Okay. All right, so we'll move on to mayor and council reports. A couple things I want to run by. One, with some of the items on the that we've listed on the Milton Legacy. I'm kind of we talked earlier about the green print and moving forward on a bond or not, and just want to let you guys know we're looking at that, but we'll defer that to our work session, and we'll get into some deeper conversation on that and some options and whatnot. The other thing I wanted to run by, we've had some requests and some folks meet with us in the past on doing some kind of assisted living type business in their home. And an example, I've seen a few in Alpharetta. I believe there may be one in Milton that just had been there for a long time, but basically a single family residence that they had 4 rooms or whatever, and a private thing where they take care of folks that might need some care. That being said, that does not fit into any of our zoning ordinances as we sit right now. So kind of wanted to see, again, we've got a few interested folks that would like to, turn their home into something that they could do a service, and I would tend to agree. I mean, personally agree that there is I'm sure a need for that, and some people might rather be in a private home versus institutional type facility, or whether we're just a few people. That being said, wanted to just kind of get a general feel if the council would like for our staff to look into that maybe later we could look into maybe having an ordinance that would allow that. Bill?
I believe there's a group home up on Providence Road, near Birmingham Road. And I kind of wonder how that's been licensed in the past, or how it's been.
Is it use permit?
What kind of use permit it's got? It's probably permitted through Fulton County. But
Yeah, again, I don't know. I know of a couple that, possibly could be there, but does staff have any idea on any of that?
I don't, but as soon as I can get to Robin, she'll know. I can almost guarantee if it was in the Fulton County days before Milton, so I'll get an answer to you on how that's permitted.
And there's a few in Alpharetta too, I think one. So again, the only thing I'm asking tonight is there, any desire on the council? I mean, I have the desire to at least explore it. Sure. That's all I'm asking, Matt.
Yeah, with the rising demographic, I think that makes sense.
It's just another, it's a low impact option there for something. Right.
I'd agree with that too, and it doesn't even necessarily have to be assisted living, more senior living, like in group home, that type of thing.
Yeah, or it would be on a small basis. But again, not asking for any decisions or making any implications on it, but just if the council's okay, we kind of, some of these folks that had asked, we told them we were busy with the conservation subdivision ordinance and other things to really couldn't quite get to looking at it, but as we move forward after that, maybe it's something that we can take a look at. So is that enough kind of direction on the back burner, Kathy, but move it to the middle of the burners or something to look at?
Yeah, we'll move it to medium.
Yeah, okay.
As far as Matt's point goes, on the demographics of aging, that's a demographic that keeps increasing.
Speaking of that, one other thing I want to, speaking of aging and demographics, I want to congratulate Councilmember Thurman on her 29th birthday.
I think this is a backhanded way of doing it.
I said 29, I didn't say 39. Your actual age, right? So happy birthday to Councilmember Thurman.
Happy birthday.
All right, any council have anything they want to report on?
Yeah, next time we meet here, the Milton Library will have its grand opening on the 16th, and a lot of great community effort has been put forth in that. And Karen and I were meeting last night on the funds, and Bill's been working hard on constructing the Friends of the Milton Library barn, which is going to be a great asset for the community. So on the 16th is when the grand opening happens, and I just want to say thanks to all the citizens that have been working towards that. It's not an easy project, but we will be the greatest library, I think, in all of Georgia because of the efforts of so many people. So I just want to say thanks to everybody involved.
Good deal. Anybody else? All right, I'll move on to staff.
Mayor, I'm going to start with a couple of updates for you tonight, a couple of staff reports, and then when you move into the published ones, I'll go confirm the research so we can bring back that last item. A couple of things to update you on tonight. I think we have reached the end of the road with progress in the Children's Learning Adventure Building. I've got to tell you publicly that they really did open their arms to us, I guess, and to our ideas. It is a very difficult place to be in a negotiation when your leverage is very, very small. And they recognize that, and I recognize that. And it's hard to say that the community would not support their building that they built here in Milton when the first day was a downpour and they had more than 1,000 people pass through the doors trying to sign their kids up. But what we've agreed to at this point, and I really think that it hopefully is in keeping with the character of Milton, is that they've agreed to turn off any of the external lighting, whether it be wall signs or they call it an interior art piece in their entryway. I kind of call it a sign myself, but without splitting hairs there, they've agreed to turn all of those lighting fixtures off from 10:30 p.m. until 6:30 a.m. That is the time that the night sky ordinance happens to kick in for a baseball game or a football game in one of our parks, and their opening time the following morning. So if what we were concerned about was the brightness and the boldness of those lights being on, they've agreed just in a letter of intent to the city to put them on timers so that they go dark overnight, which I think is definitely a step in the right direction.
I would like to see us update our sign ordinance, though, so it's not just the 5 feet, but does say any sign which is clearly visible from the exterior. Because to me, yes, I appreciate them being willing to do that, but I agree with you. It's a sign that's meant to be seen from outside, and to me, any sign that's meant to be seen from outside ought to have to conform to our sign ordinance.
Right. Fair enough. Well, Ken and I'll talk about that tomorrow. I want to confirm with you all a change in the council retreat dates. We were going to do Thursday a staff retreat, Friday council retreat, and then Saturday a joint retreat of the staff and the council. That's changed to staff being there on August 13th, council there on August 14th, and then we'll jointly meet on the 17th, a Monday. That Monday we have a council meeting that evening, and that will accommodate some scheduling conflicts that we had. So stand by for future updates on that. There will be times and all sent out. Anticipate an all day on the 14th and probably a partial day on the 17th. I want to let you know that Councilmember Thurman and Councilmember Hewitt and I showed up late. Attended a walk with several members of the Alpharetta community from the Milton Library to their neighborhood in Danbury Park on Thursday. There's some discussions as to whether or not that sidewalk portion there would be a good piece to add. I guess what we will do this year as we work through the budget processes, it'll become just another one of the potential capital projects that the council will consider in their priority. But I want to let you know that if you're starting to see those emails, that's what it's about. The uniqueness in this particular circumstance is the project itself would be in Milton. The citizens served are citizens of Alpharetta. So it's a little bit of an anomaly. I think we probably want to start the conversations with the city of Alpharetta here shortly to see if there's some partnership opportunity, and I believe there is. But I just wanted to let you know that was the outcome of that walk with folks, and it's certainly something that 14 elected officials really need to get involved in and see if we can figure out if there's a community-based way of partnership in solving that. So I look forward to any information you might be able to provide me on that. Two more things. One is that I sent in an email, and you're probably anticipating that I was going to send you with a job description tonight for a conservation project manager, and that was in that email, and I intended on doing that for you tonight. I'd like to ask your permission, I guess, to wait and distribute that 1 week from tonight, Monday. Part of that is because Kathy has not been here for the last 2 weeks on vacation, and I don't want to pass something out that would impact her department, and she hasn't even had the chance to review it yet. So it's more timely, I think, based upon the agenda items of next week, and really 7 days is of nothing material. So I didn't want you to think that we had forgotten, but that will be coming forward a week from now. And the final one, and maybe the biggest one I have to bring to you tonight, to even get to start thinking about it, deals with some direction that you gave us when you approved an agenda item a while back that was on the lot area coverage, if you remember, and working with the manor specifically to figure out if there was a way to become, I guess, an easier review authority, or to become less difficult, I guess, to get through for the manor itself. I did have the meeting with Lee and Lee Duncan, and we discussed that. Frankly, it was a very short meeting, because the thing that the manor finds acceptable for them is to just be exempted from that portion of our code. And we had the meeting, and I said, is there anything else short of that is a success in your book? And he said no, that their standards were more stringent than ours, and that was the suitable solution. And I said, well, this is going to be a real short meeting, because I don't have the authority to grant that. Only the council has the authority to even consider that from a policy perspective. So I'm bringing that to you, that was the outcome of us meeting. There was nothing else offered as acceptable. If you want to think about that, and if you want to provide me feedback at some other point as to whether or not you'd consider something either along those lines or along some other objective line as to who would have to comply with those architectural parts of our code and who wouldn't, I'm open to that. But there's nothing we can streamline in our process. There's nothing we can change in our code. There's none of the answers to those questions were getting us anywhere, other than they just don't want to. And I get where they're coming from, so I don't mean to sound as though I was shocked where we ended up, because they do build a very beautiful house in the manor, and I don't think any of us object to what that architecture looks like. I guess it's more from the capacity of whether or not the council wants to abandon its ability to review architecturally single-family residential in certain areas, and whether that would be one neighborhood or many. But I don't have the authority to grant what was being asked for. And I'd be happy to take any questions on that, or think it over. I would also, in closing, like to ask, and I sent this in an email, if you could find time in the next 10 days to come spend 30 to 45 minutes with me. I really want to be able to sit down individually one-on-one a couple of open topics, and then one very visual open topic, and that's some of the interior renderings of the new City Hall building. Those have been delivered in working documents, and I really have no other way than to sit down at a computer with you and show them to you and get your feedback. So early in the morning, late at night, I'll try to accommodate whatever works for you all. So having said that, I will be back to take any questions that might arise out of any other staff reports or any that I've given tonight. Let me go work on the number that Councilmember Coons needs, and I'll turn it over to either Stacy or Carter, and they can shepherd us through the department updates, and I'll be back shortly.
Okay. Guess the first update would be coming from the police department. Chief Crocom.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. A couple of quick things I just wanted to touch on in some of our efforts to improve some of the relationships and cooperation between us and our state and federal partners. I attended two summits. One was the Summit on 21st Century Policing in the Northern District of Georgia. It was put on by the U.S. Attorney's Office. It was a gathering of leaders from across northern Georgia talking about procedural justice, really about bringing community members and policing together, trying to improve relationships, bring about a better level of legitimacy within law enforcement. It's not something that I'm completely unfamiliar with. It was something that I was working on with actually some of the presenters that were there at the event. Additionally, in fact, the next day I attended the Heroin and Opioid Conference, which was also organized by the U.S. Attorney's Office, and that was really about how we can work together to combat some of the
right now it's mainly opioid, but it's going to be more heroin issues in the metro area. U.S. Attorney is looking at putting together a work group on that, which I have volunteered to play a large role in. Looking forward to seeing how that plays out. Additionally, the Milton Police Department is creating an accident investigation team as I continue doing my assessments of the department and some of the issues that we have going on externally. One of the gaps I have found is that we do have a decent amount of accidents that occur in the city of Milton, and there was a gap between that and the amount of training we had as an organization in dealing with some of the more serious accidents. And as a result, we are forming a team. It's going to be headed by Lieutenant Borsey, and he reached out to volunteers across the agency to see who would like to get involved. We got a good response. They're going to all be trained up. There are many levels of training that are involved, which goes right through not only traffic accident investigation but accident reconstruction. It's a difficult educational process, and I was pleased to see the number of people that were willing to participate in that. It will allow us to have a team that can respond in the event that we have a serious accident, which unfortunately we've had 2 already since I've been here. But it'll also spread the talent out across the shifts to be able to deal with other types of accidents. We'll also be looking at improving our threshold of training across the board for all of our officers to have. But this group will have the accident reconstruction training. On a lighter note, we worked with Alpharetta PD and actually members from Marietta and DeKalb just last week, 2 weeks ago, for the PAL Field Day. We had about 200 kids together, and they did a whole bunch of things like sack races and relay races and 8, and everybody had a ball, including the cops. It was a great opportunity for the kids to start seeing the police officers as just regular human beings, and it's a great time. A little hot, but it was a great time. Any questions?
Questions? Bill?
Chief, have you developed a budget for this new initiative, accident investigation team?
I don't believe it's going to be very expensive at all. Most of the training I can get through Georgia Post. As far as the equipment is concerned, there's a few things I'm going to need, like cameras and some other equipment, but what I'm looking to do is leverage some expenditures that we ended up not making this year because they were able to find some cost savings and some seized assets. So I expect that in the end, we should be budget neutral.
Good. Sounds like a great effort.
Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Public Works. Carter?
Good evening. Wanted to just touch base on a couple of contracts that you'll see coming forward or may have just seen approved. Birmingham Hopewell Road, you've seen, has been cleared. It'll probably look like nothing is going on for a little while. That was cleared in preparation for utility relocations. We anticipate those utility relocations for power, telephone, and cable to take approximately 90 days before we get going in earnest on the rest of the intersection improvements up there. Big Creek Greenway connection. We did give our presentation to the Alpharetta City Council. They were very adamant on wanting to improve their connection between City Hall, Avalon, and the Big Creek Greenway. This would take it across most likely the Webb Bridge Road connection there, which is on the very southern end of our study area. So it's something that we are looking at. We'll also be looking at additional connections as we move forward with our transportation master plan here. That would include some connectivity up on the northern section here, Webb Road Extension being one of those that we've discussed, and how that works with the McGinnis Ferry interchange. So there'll be some additional information probably provided to the Alpharetta City Council and to you all regarding those potential connections to the Big Creek Greenway. Pavement management coming up. I should see a contract hopefully at the July 20th meeting. We'll be gearing up for our annual paving, hopefully starting in August, late August, to get that going in earnest too. Transportation master plan, another contract you should see coming forward here at the July 20th meeting. Currently in negotiations with highest rated firm that we had through our RFQ process, so we should be wrapping that up and be able to get that contract moving and get that process up and running. Probably anticipate about a year. We've asked them to try and accelerate that as best they can, but about a year of the public information process and council meetings with that. One of the contracts that you just saw for our capital bridge planning, this is a pilot project we're running on 3 bridges here in the city. It's a little bit different than our normal inspection and the GDOT inspection in that it's a more comprehensive look at each bridge. Rather than just a structural look at each bridge component, we're also looking at safety and alignment components with that. This is going to help us with our overall operation and maintenance of the bridges, as well as capital planning for future projects on those bridges. So we tried to select 3 bridges that were representative of all of our, or most of our bridges, to help us develop some standard specifications and inspection methodologies for those. So we'll go through those 3 bridges, see how the results of that comes out, and then we'll be looking to expand that program to our other bridges in the near future. Another contract that you saw was the fire training facility. 2 components of this. There's a live fire training facility that the fire department is working towards to allow them to move some of their actual training activities from the burn building that Alpharetta and Roswell run up to the area behind Station 43. So we're looking at the master planning of that facility, as well as a joint storage facility between Public Works and the fire department. So that will also be back in our Public Works yard right behind Station 43, or in the area that we're looking at for the burn building. Another project you'll see coming forward here, contract coming forward, will be our fuel management system. So we're moving to a more automated fuel management system that will allow us to track fuel usage and assign it to various departments. So that's going to greatly enhance and improve our efficiency in managing our fuel system. Gravel road maintenance started today. You may have seen that. They'll generally start on the north end and work south on that, and probably anticipate about 3 to 4 weeks of work over the summer getting all the gravel roads up and running. And I think that is it. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Okay. Any questions for Carter?
Just one quick question on the Highway 9 Bethany Bend intersection. So GDOT did approve potentially the plan. Is that the one that I think you and I had looked at?
It is, and it'll be incorporated in the overall improvements will be incorporated into the Highway 9 widening, which was the split intersection. We are also looking at some short-term improvements with them, and at this point kind of walking through some of the funding alternatives to improve some of the signal timing and safety aspects at that intersection. So that short-term improvements are in process now, hopefully be completed over the next 6 to 9 months.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
Bill?
Carter, what's the status of the McGinnis Ferry interchange as far as public comment and design on that particular project?
Yeah, that's a really good question. We have normally been included in a monthly update with GDOT and Forsyth County. We have not had any information on that recently, so we'll need to be pushing on that a little bit. I think their opinion was, while we've been included by GDOT, if the monthly meetings were going to be routine, basic meetings between Forsyth County and GDOT, they may not necessarily bring in ourselves and Alpharetta. So I don't have an update on that right now, but we'll work on getting some information for that.
Okay. Anybody else? All right. Thank you, Carter.
Thank you.
Okay, next up we have Parks and Recreation, Mr. Jim Gregg.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Here I want to report on 4 things that are happening right now. First, of course, is Bell Memorial Park. Progress is continuing, and starting next week, you're going to start seeing a lot of the visual things in terms of grass being put down and fencing and things going up. Obviously, a lot of the work up until now has been the moving of the dirt and piping underground and the systems. But the exciting stuff, the stuff that's visual to people, we're going to start seeing it popping up out of the ground in about another week or so. So look forward to that. And what that means is that we're starting to see the end in sight. And we have established a preliminary schedule. We're looking at what we call a soft opening, which is start using the fields on the weekend of Saturday, September 5. Just do some practices and things and start to see how the park works, how we operate the park. And we're looking at a formal grand reopening celebration on Saturday, September 12. So again, it's preliminary, but I'd like to ask you guys to start to put that on your schedule. We're looking at something like an 8:30 ribbon cutting, working very closely with Courtney Spriggs and Angela Thompson as we schedule this. But we'll probably do a ribbon cutting. We're thinking of getting Councilman Coons to do the first tackle, something along the line. But that's what we're looking at for now. But it's coming together. So we're very excited about that. Providence Park. It's another project we're working on. The safety work is getting started. I am expecting bid responses back this Friday from 3 different fence vendors. The very first thing I'm focused on is getting the fencing that surrounds the pit repaired. I'm not replacing it all. There's a lot of it that's good, but we're going to repair that which needs to be repaired. We're also going to take down a lot of the chain link that's no longer necessary. There was chain link fencing around an area where the contamination site was. Much of that has fallen down either through nature or vandalism. So we're going to take it down. And also we're looking at the fencing around the maintenance shed and get that taken down. Get the fencing on that. Speaking of the maintenance shed, we've got some preparations done there. We have physically disconnected the Georgia Power. Yes, Georgia Power was still going to the building. And we've also evicted approximately 5 to 6 feet length of honeybee's nest. We had a professional honeybee specialist come in, and unlike yellow jackets, which simply get exterminated, these honeybees were captured and then brought back, and they have been put back into business.
They have been relocated.
That's the word I was looking for. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Relocated.
I hate when my brain does that. But one of the things I learned in the process, it is estimated that 1 in 3 things that you eat at some point gets touched by a honeybee. And that's why they're so important in our society. So we recovered them. We did not destroy them. Right? But boy, there was a lot.
There's a shortage, too.
Yes, there are, because they're being contaminated by some little mite of some kind. We expect to have both buildings boarded up until we make decisions on physical removal of the buildings, and I am hopeful that I'll be bringing to you folks at the July 20th meeting a contract for the fence work. And if all goes well, we're targeting an opening sometime in October for at least as walking trails and so on and so forth. The goal is to get it open to the public as fast as we can. As soon as we take care of the most important safety issues, we will. Our summer camps. Basketball camp started really, really well. We were doing great up until we went up against a celebrity camp by the Hawks, and we kind of took a dip. But we're coming back, and the camps are going well again. Camp Joyful Souls continues to roll along. Thank goodness for the Community of Christ Church. We have record enrollment. I've told you before, we had record enrollment in terms of number of participants as well as the number of weeks participants are coming. And we still have today people signing up that they haven't signed up previously. So the word's getting out that we're doing good things there with Camp Joyful Souls. And I do want to give a shout out to the counselors, the supervisors and counselors. It's a challenging environment having just the basement of Community of Christ Church. Don't get me wrong, we're not complaining. We're appreciative because otherwise we wouldn't have had it. But it's not as much space as we normally operate in at Hopewell Middle School. And we've got a group of counselors that have been very creative in trying to solve some of these issues we deal with. And then the last thing, we have some parks projects going along. Again, I'm getting great help from Carter and from Matthew Volstrom on running these projects, but we have 3 projects in which we are resodding. We resodded Cogburn Woods Elementary School, Hopewell Middle School, and Friendship Community Park. I will tell you, after the sod was put down, we had a problem with the irrigation system, and we lost all the sod at Friendship Community Park. Our contractor, Triscapes, they took the position that they should have identified that irrigation problem beforehand, and they have replaced all the sod at no charge to the city of Milton. We have it's wonderful working, great contractors. We also have a small resodding project going on at Birmingham Falls, and in working with partnership with Eagle Sticks, there's resodding going on at Northwestern. So all 5 IGA fields are being touched right now. And in addition to Northwestern, we have the 2 other projects, the one where we're taking a baseball softball field, rotating it and converting it into a baseball softball field with a lacrosse outfield. That's under construction now. They've been done demolition work, and they're starting some of the leveling. The other project, which was to take an area between the tennis courts and the existing field, that we're at the point that we've leveled it out, and we've got the irrigation system in, which the irrigation system for that field was not in the original contract. That was an ad that Eagle Sticks donated to help keep that project moving along. So things have been going very well. The partnerships have been going great. Hopewell's looking to get started with baseball, and things are looking great. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them for you.
Okay, anybody questions? Perhaps questions for John? Okay.
Thanks. Have a good night.
Okay, next up we have community development. Kathy Field.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council. I'd like to highlight for you this evening some of the issues that will be coming before you within the next couple of months. First of all, starting with rezonings, this month on the 20th, you'll be reviewing an application on 3225 Francis Road to rezone from 1 single-family home to 2 family homes. Next month, you will be looking at a petition to rezone and a use permit to allow for the expansion of the existing school at 3503, 3505 Bethany Bend. 3 text amendments are going to be coming before you for consideration next month, including one to review the rural view shed within the rural Milton overlay for single-family types of uses. Secondly, to amend the private swimming pool standards. And this really deals with the barriers around private swimming pools. And lastly, to create a definition for barriers as it relates to swimming pools. And then in terms of some of the major initiatives that we've been working on, the conservation subdivision ordinance will come before you next week in a work session to be followed by the formal review meeting on July 20th. The impact fee study, the methodology report, and the capital improvement element will be reviewed by you in work session next week, and then to be followed by a meeting for you to consider it on July 20th. And then lastly, the Arnold Mill Corridor Form-Based Code. At your request, we have scheduled 2 community meetings. They have been scheduled. The first is going to be held tomorrow evening, July 7th, at the Alpharetta Courthouse. And then secondly, another meeting will be held on July 21st, again at the courthouse. Subsequent to those meetings, we will have a work session on August the 10th in terms of what we have garnered from those 2 public meetings. And then lastly, the council meeting on August 17th will be where the final report does come to you for your consideration. Yes?
For those meetings that are in the Alpharetta Courthouse, is it possible to get one of those reader boards or something for people that are coming down Arnold Mill Road so that they will know about that meeting?
Sure, we can talk to Carter and see if he can give us one. That's a great idea. We tried to get the church up there on the corridor, and we couldn't contact them, and became a timing issue. So we moved it to the courthouse. But that would be helpful and certainly a great idea. We'll take you up on that. Thank you.
I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but if we're under a sign moratorium, we can't do that.
Oh.
Oh, okay.
I just heard what I thought I heard, so I leaned over and checked with Ken, and even we can't put a sign up that's larger than 2 by 2 during this period that we have the sign moratorium in place.
That's right.
What are we doing to make sure people know about this meeting for sure? And
We have been sending out notices. I got one just today about the meeting, which was the reminder. The meeting notice did go out last week. So Angela has been sending out notices, and it's also been...
Are we sending out specific emails to all of those that have attended the previous meetings?
Yes, we did. Yes, that as well. Yes, we do have that email list.
Anybody else?
Would you want to address that more? I think there was questions, but maybe Ken can address more specifically the direction he's given me.
Right, yeah, so the issue is that in Milton we have in place a moratorium that candidly prevents the erection of all signage except that very limited, I think we call them informational signs, and the city is going to have to comply with that. There was no exception in the moratorium for the city, and candidly I would have been uncomfortable putting one that would have allowed certain speech if it was governmentally sponsored to be exempt from the moratorium. So all I can tell you is we are working as diligently as we can to get the moratorium lifted, candidly, so I can bring to you a sign code that I believe will withstand the scrutiny of the new Supreme Court decision. That's the ultimate objective here.
I think what Karen was thinking about, and you may be on the same page as this, is like one of the signs that says, construction zone ahead, 35 miles an hour.
Right.
I thought it was signs that required a permit.
Well, no, it's any signage.
Okay.
It was any signage, but obviously to the extent we need to keep citizens safe with respect to public safety signage for how you route traffic. Now, I mean we obviously have to be reasonable and look out. Obviously, the public safety trumps. So if this is something that leads to public safety, then I would be. I don't think it does, but.
Anybody else?
Just one.
Right?
Ken, do you have any idea when you think we're going to have a revised sign ordinance? Because I know we have a number of new businesses that are wanting to do signs, but they can't. They didn't have their permits in.
It's my hope that we'll have an update to you at the next work session, and that'll give you a clear direction on what we need to do to get the thing lifted altogether. My objective is going to be to allow the moratorium to come off, except for the bare minimum we need to keep on the moratorium, and allow all the other signs to go ahead and move forward. Very much like you did on the moratorium we're about to consider later, whereas we figured out certain areas don't apply, we lift the moratoriums to those areas. That's going to be my objective, and hopefully, Councilmember Morag, I'll have you something by next Monday.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry to interrupt, Kathy.
All right, thank you, Kathy.
Okay, the last department we have tonight is economic development. Ms. Sarah.
Hi, good evening, Mayor and Council. In the last month, we've done some cool things. I got a phone call last week on my way down to Savannah for GMA from a company. It's 18 months out, but they're looking to move 27 jobs into 20,000 square feet in Deerfield. So I got them a report of available spaces, and hopefully in the next 18 months, we'll see an announcement from them. That was just an exciting thing. And they're good jobs. They're like, I asked him what the average salary was, and he said between $70,000 and $75,000. So those are the jobs that we want. So hopefully that will happen. Like I said, I went down to Savannah for GMA and represented the city of Milton at a couple events and made some good contacts and continued to grow some relationships with people that I already had. I also I got back from Savannah Monday and then left for Austin Tuesday morning with the Metro Chamber. They are doing a huge Georgia President at the South by Southwest Festival next March, and I'm on the planning committee. And the cool thing about this thing that they're doing is we're not going out there to look for companies. We're out there, it's talent recruitment. We're trying to get those millennials, try to tell them what's cool about Atlanta. We're trying to figure out how to reach them And one thing that we're going to do have some seminars on different like coding and computer science type things in the morning, and then literally bring people who have companies who have jobs available right now. So as people are walking out of these coding training sessions, we'll have hopefully like the Verizons and the tech companies from here say, here's a job in Atlanta that's available to you right now. If you're interested, let's go interview you. And so that really attracting them and bringing them. And that's why I think that this is a good one for Milton to be involved in. And I have a friend who lives there, so I don't have to pay for a hotel room. So that'll save Milton money. And the fact that Milton was invited on this, I don't think Milton has ever been invited to participate in Metro Chamber events. I could be wrong, Chris. Am I wrong?
No, I think you're right.
There, yeah. So it's really cool that they're thinking about us now. And if we participate in a couple of these a year, then they'll be thinking about us all the time. So that's good. And then Matt, I talked with the guy at the Sugar Hill Sweet Spot, and I'm going to tour that at 10 o'clock on July 14th. If anybody would like to join me, it's a business incubator. And that's my report. Do y'all have any questions?
That's great.
No?
Thank you,
Good.
Sarah.
All right, thank you.
All right.
Mayor and Council, I think that's all we have tonight, unless you've got any additional questions of me in the form of staff reports. I'm prepared to go back into the agenda item that you referred.
All right, let's move back into the unfinished agenda item.
For the record, just so we have that back on, this is a new business now, or consideration of a resolution of the City of Milton, Georgia regarding possible extension to existing 90-day moratorium barring acceptance of applications for land disturbance permits for residential development on property in the R1, R2, T2, and AG1 zoning districts. It was and is agenda item number 15185. Mayor and Council, after doing the research and of much appreciation for Councilmember Thurman, was able to find my email quicker than I could have found it. Been able to answer that question and confirm that what was applied for was on 194 acres, 115 lots. Total of 194 acres, requested 115 lots.
To clarify, do you also have the number of applications? Was it
It's six.
Okay.
Yep, it's six, ranging anywhere from 11 lots on 9 acres to 3 lots on 30 acres.
I'm prepared to make a motion.
Okay. And, anybody else have any comments? If not,
I'll have a comment prior, and it's,
yeah, go ahead.
I mean, obviously, it's not so much the acreage, I think, that matters in the northern part of our city. It's the conserving of the beauty and the history that we have. If we have a moratorium and we make a decision in 2 weeks, I'm okay with that. If it's a 60-day deal, I'm okay with that. I just worry about the acreage as it is, because there are things on smaller acres that can disappear just as much as on larger acreage. So that's just my concern.
Okay. Anybody else? All right, Bert. We'll,
I'd like to make a motion for the consideration of a resolution of the City of Milton, Georgia, regarding extension to the existing. Extension of 60 days to the existing 90-day moratorium barring acceptance of application for land disturbance permits for residential development on properties 10 acres or less in the R1, R2, T2, and Ag 1 zoning districts. Agenda 15, item 15185.
just to clarify, you mean 10 acres or less or 10 acres or more?
10 acres or less.
I'll second that.
I just didn't clarify. So are we?
You're excluding 10
Excluding
acres or
the-
less.
Yeah, I want to make sure.
Because it sounded like you were
Okay.
putting a moratorium
Yeah, I
on
think
10
you were
acres or
right.
less.
You're
Exclude
extending the
anything
moratorium.
less than 10 acres. Extend the moratorium on anything
Greater.
10 acres or more.
I will second that.
Is
I
that
understand.
Okay, so right now I've got a motion from Councilmember Hewitt and a second from Councilmember Morag. Is there any discussion on that?
I'm just going to say, I don't know if it goes far enough, so I'll deny it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry,
and-
what was that?
I don't think it goes far enough on the acreage, so I probably won't vote for it.
And my denial will be based on, I think we had our chance, and I don't think that business as usual will hurt us in the time that it takes us to pass a subdivision ordinance or conservation subdivision ordinance.
Well, I'll just say, and again, I'm not in support of this. I think we're going a little ways with this motion here, but I'm not in support of the blanket, the one that's on our agenda. So if I support this one, it's only because I'm supporting it because it is getting in a direction that is probably a little more reasonable. I guess, the big thing is it's on us to, we're saying 60 days, but, we need to, we'll be looking at the conservation subdivision ordinance in 2 weeks, and that was the whole reason for this moratorium. So I think it's incumbent on us to, get serious and make a decision and move forward. And, again, then remove this uncertainty there. Any other comments? Okay. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
That's 5-2 with Councilmember Coots and Longoria against. All right. If that's all on our agenda, anybody have anything else? If not, we will
I'll move to
adjourn.
Second.
Have a motion, second to adjourn. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye.